going on, guys? Welcome to the LowKick MMA Weekly Roundup. I'm your host, Ryan Galloway, here with Jordan Ellis. Jordan, what did you think of the fights this weekend? It was a weird event, wasn't it? We didn't have any finishes until late on the card, so it was kind of dull at the beginning, but the fights were very competitive for the most part, and it wasn't the worst card. What did you think?
Yeah, it was good. It was one of them cards that picked up as it went on. As the prelims were playing out, I weren't particularly zoned into the fight. So I was probably messing about doing other stuff around the house. But then as the prelims ended, we had a controversial finish there, and then we just seemed to get more and more interesting fights. We had a split draw in there. A couple of good fights, a couple of good finishes as well. So yeah, it started to pick up from about actually the TJ Brown Kamaka fight is when things started to pick up. Before then, it went, the most interesting card, but it got there in the end. And we signed off in a flurry. The main event delivered big time, and a huge finish and a new potential star.
Yeah, and that was it. The story, wasn't it? The main event was just far leaps and bounds better than everything else in this card. It was just incredible. I honestly, when I was picking this fight, I did pick Reyes. I thought he'd be able to last a bit longer. I thought he'd be able to swing the fight in his favor in the later rounds, but that just wasn't the case. Prochazka is a problem. He's got so much power in his hands. His chin is made of granite, and a couple of times there it looked like he was on wobbly legs, looked like he was probably in danger, but his fight IQ was smart enough to try other stuff like grappling to keep himself in the fight, and that finish was just brutal. What did you think?
Yeah, it was sensational. And I think besides the finish, which we'll get to in a minute, the actual performance from Jiri was, start to finish. He just beat Dominick Reyes around the octagon. I know he had a couple of moments, Reyes, but really it was just a one-sided, absolute beating. And it was, we've seen Dominick Reyes lose a couple of times now, and he looked good against Jones, and some people think he should have got that one, but then he got convincingly beat by Blachowicz. This is the most we've seen him actually beat up in the cage. It was start to finish. It looked like a mismatch, and obviously it weren't, but that's what it looked like on the night, and it was sensational. And then obviously you get to the finish, and it's one of the knockouts of the year. We're gonna be speaking about it, when we do our recap shows in the coming months, and I'm sure we'll be speaking about this KO. It was insane. It goes with everything he's about. It. I think we'll see more of these knockouts from him. I don't think this is the last we'll see of it. And just sensational. A new star was born, and there's your next light heavyweight contender, I think.
100%. And I believe that his fighting style makes it so he can't have boring fights. Like, you cannot fight this guy any other way than to get in there with him and just throw in the pocket. And let's be honest, he's not unbeatable. He was stumbled a couple of times in this fight. It looked like he was going to be put out of the up kicks at one point. He is definitely beatable. But if you're going to beat him, you have to wade into the fire, and that is a dangerous place to be, as Dominick Reyes found out. I am keen to see him fight for the title. I'm keen to see him fight Rakic. That would be a very fun one. I don't know if the title is next for him, given that it might be in September. So what do you think about giving him the Rakic fight in the meantime?
The Rakic fight makes sense, but if you're the UFC, you've got a guy like Prochazka who is, super, super exciting, or a guy like Rakic who do you want to give the shot to? They might just allow him to wait it out and get him in there, because Rakic he's been very impressive, but I don't think the UFC, he's someone the UFC are going to want to get behind. He's been doing, he's very tactical in his fights. There's been some heavy wrestling displays, as we've seen against Smith. So I want to see that fight. Do I think that's what the UFC will do? I'm not sure. It depends if Prochazka is saying, I really want another fight, but I think the UFC people will be content just to let him, maybe be back up for that light heavyweight fight and then fight the winner. But either way, we're on for some exciting things. And as you said, he's not unbeatable. There is a very clear way to beat him. You've just got to crack him at the right moment. Mm-hmm. And it just is anyone in the light heavyweight division right now capable of doing that. I'm not sure. I don't know if Jan Blachowicz or Glover Teixeira have even got the tools to do something like that to him, but I guess we'll find out in the coming months, and hopefully this year or maybe next.
I do think he's a big problem for Glover Teixeira, just his style and his unorthodox striking. Blachowicz, on the other hand, maybe he can land a counter on him. That would be a really interesting one to me. I just want to say something, and maybe it's a bold call given we've only seen him twice, but I feel like this is what everyone wanted Johnny Walker to be. This is when everyone was like, Johnny Walker's going to fight Jon Jones. He's going to be Jon Jones' toughest chest. This is what we expected from Johnny Walker, and it wasn't the case then, but it seems like we're getting it now.
Yeah, and it is with this type of style, it is about the chin, and you've got to have an amazing chin. And obviously Johnny Walker, and I'm not dissing him, but obviously his chin didn't hold up. He got knocked out by Corey Jansen, who's not necessarily known as a puncher. Whereas Prochazka, he's been in there with Volkan, who I might say I think he's probably the biggest puncher at 205. Volkan, I think he's the biggest puncher. We've seen him start a lot of guys, and he took his power. So going into this one, I was pretty confident he'd be able to take Reyes' power, because Reyes. He's got a lot of knockouts on his record, but I don't consider him a massive punter. And his big knockouts have come against middleweights as well, in Chris Weidman and Cannonier. So yeah, I expected Prochazka to come through, and he looked better than I even expected him to look. But I don't think someone like Jan is worried. He's probably thinking, I can get him. I've got that Polish power. I can knock him out. And it's very interesting, because you've got three of the top four contenders at light heavyweight now. They're all from the same region in Eastern Europe. So it's going to be interesting to see how all that plays out. But light heavyweight's on fire. We said this as soon as Jon Jones moved up, it actually got interesting again, and it just keeps getting more interesting with this addition to the division.
And just before we move on, how do you think it would have played out had Jones not moved up? Do you think we would have seen stars like this emerge so quickly? And do you think that Jones would have struggled against these guys like Blachowicz and Prochazka and Rakic? Or do you think it would have just been the Jones era as usual and he would have just pushed through him?
I personally think someone would have beat him, just because he didn't seem motivated for the fights anymore. Like, if he's trying to get himself up for a Jan Blachowicz fight, I just don't see Jon Jones turning up at his best. Whereas right now, Jan is the best version we've ever seen. He looks fantastic. He just beat Israel Adesanya, who everyone's saying is the next. Well, he already is the big thing. He's one of the best fighters in MMA. Just beat him. Dominated Reyes. So I think Blachowicz might have got him if he actually got that chance, just because Jones wouldn't have given him the respect he deserves.
Yeah, that might be the case. I guess we'll never know, but and I'm sure we'll talk about Jones later on when we do news, because there was something referring to him. But we'll jump onto the co-main event now between Giga Chikadze and Cub Swanson. Another one I picked incorrectly. I thought Swanson was going to get a finish here if anyone was going to get a finish. But Chikadze kicks hard, and when it lands, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is the performance I've been waiting from, because obviously I know his fans, the Georgians, they're all on his. They all love him. They all think he's the next big thing. But I hadn't seen it yet. I had seen some, fairly impressive but fairly boring decisions. Then he knocked out Jamie Simmons last time, who was a late notice replacement opponent. So this was just for me the coming out party, the first big step up, and he passed it with flying colours. He looked fantastic, perfect shot. I don't want to get too carried away, because Cub Swanson, he is on the end of his career now. We can't deny that. This is not the best Cub Swanson, but this is what I think Chikadze should be doing with these type of guys. If he's as good as all these people say he is, he should take out Cub Swanson really quickly, and he should be moving on to the ranked guys now, hopefully. So really impressive performance, great shot. It's what I've been wanting to see. I understand the hype. I'm just not fully. I'm not fully on the train, not quite yet anyway. I want one more win against a slightly better opponent before I start, picking him as a potential champion.
And he had some bold call-outs, didn't he? He called out Max Holloway, then he called out Yair Rodriguez, Calvin Kattar. I don't think he gets any of those names, but I wouldn't mind seeing him there with someone like a Josh Emmett or who else? Ryan Hall would be a really fun one. I know Hall's probably not ranked anymore because he hasn't fought in 10 years, but that would be a fun one. Or Bryce Mitchell would be another fun one. Who do you think they give him next?
Yeah, I know he wants to jump the queue, and he's in his 30s, and he's obviously in a rush. I want to see him. Bryce Mitchell, just off the top of my head of what you've just said, would be a very fun fight. There's lots in that featherweight division for him. I don't think he should be trying to jump to the front of the queue. I don't think he will be allowed to do that. I don't think he's a big enough star quite yet. So, a Bryce Mitchell, that does appeal to me. Someone like that, a Ryan Hall, someone to test him on the ground. He is a kickboxer. He's very talented at that, but how is he going to look on the floor against these type of guys who are basically wizards on the mat? So yeah, but it is an exciting time. He is a good fighter. That was the best performance I've ever seen him give. And he's delivered on the hype. You can't fault him on that. It's just there is a lot of hype behind him, and he needs to go through the process of fighting the Bryce Mitchells, the Ryan Hall, rather than jumping straight to Max Holloway, who is one of the biggest stars in the sport. It's ambitious. You can't fault him for that, but it's not going to happen.
No, I tend to agree with you there. We'll move on. Before that, we had light heavyweights. Ion Kudalaba taking on Dustin Jacoby. They fought to a draw. Did you think that was the right call?
Yeah, I did. I think it was a pretty easy one to score as well, even though only one of the judges got it right. Kudalaba 10-8 in the first round. He absolutely battered them. It was a fair 10. It was a very obvious 10-8. And for me, Dustin Jacoby took the last 2 rounds. Kudalaba took his foot off the pedal a little bit. Yeah, and for me, it was a clear draw, and they got it right in the end.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I thought that first round was definitely 10-8. The other two, probably in Jacoby's favour. What did you think about how Kudalaba had recovered and how he looked compared to the last fight when he came out and got finished by Ankalaev?
I think Kudalaba's just one of them guys. He seems to hype himself up too much. He's tried to strangle him at the weigh-ins, and he always tries that thing where he walks straight across the cage to them, and they have to stop him this time. So he's maybe he just burns all that energy in the first round. But for that first round, he looked fantastic, and credit to Jacoby for taking it all, because he got absolutely battered. And it didn't look bad in the last 2 rounds either. If anyone was going to win that fight, it was him. He might have nicked one of them rounds. I don't think he did, but he might have. And he looked good. But this was against the guy who was getting just a few days' notice as well. So you can't take too much from it. And he didn't even come out with a win. So I'm sure he'll be pissed off about that. I think Jacoby might just think, I've won 2 of the 3 rounds. I've just had one bad round and it's cost me an actual win. So on 6 days' notice or whatever it was. So I think he'll be pretty happy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're, like you said, Jacoby's position, short notice fight, as long as you don't lose, it's a good day, right? But Kudalaba, yeah, like you said, he really did dominate that first round, so he kind of threw away the fight later on, but what can you do? That'll happen. Before that, we did have middleweights, Sean Strickland and Christoph Jocko. I really thought this was a showcase performance for Strickland. I thought he looked great in this one. Did you see the same thing? What did you think?
Yeah, he looked good. I think he looked like he was on his way to a finish early, but then I think maybe midway of the fight, he realised that Jocko's a bit too tough. He's not going to be able to get him out of there that easy. He'd have to put himself in the line of fire to actually pull something like that off, and he just cruised to a decision win after that. But he looks fantastic. His hands look great. He talks a lot of shit on the mic. Like he every time he's talking in the cage, but then he gets the mic and he's chatting crap as well. So I know Brendan Allen called him out, but I do agree with Sean on that one, that it's probably not the time for that fight. He battered them not long ago. So I'd like Sean to move on now and start climbing up that division. I think he's ranked 15th. I think he should be looking towards the top 10 and them type of guys, because clearly at this level, no one's really a match for him. I want to see him climb up now.
Yeah, definitely like Amari Agmadov. Who else is there? Kevin Holland might be a fun one. Just those guys. The fringe 10 guys are really where he should be good fighting. I don't like the idea of a Brendan Allen rematch. That just doesn't appeal to me. We already saw that. Like, how long ago was that? It wasn't too long ago. Yeah. I don't know what you do with Sean Strickland. Is there any particular names you can think?
The Kevin Holland one, it's a fun fight because they're both come like 2 of the biggest talkers, I would say, in MMA. Imagine them chatting. They probably just wouldn't even fight. They probably just stand there and have a conversation for 15 minutes. But I like that fight because I think Kevin Holland should be dropping down at least a little bit now. I don't want to see him in these last-minute main events. I know he's trying to fight Donald Cerrone, but I don't want to see it. I think he needs to drop down, take a full camp seriously, and get in there with someone like Sean Strickland, who's coming to take your head off. So I do like that matchup.
Fair enough. And opening the main card, we had the bantamweight matchup. Probably my favorite fight on this card on paper was Merab Dvalishvili taking on Cody Stamann. I believe when we broke it down, I said that it would determine if it was going to be Cody Stamann who won this, it would be a boring fight where he was held down on the ground. And if it was an interesting fight, Merab was going to win it. I was probably wrong on that. It was quite interesting, even though there was some back and forth on the ground. But Merab is just a beast, and I felt like he dominated the entire fight.
I love both guys. I thought this, for me, if you're giving bonuses out, I think this was the fight tonight. I thought it was 2 guys, really high level. I think it was some of the most high level we've seen on the card, and they are both clearly potential title challenges. And I think Merab just edged it out, but he looked fantastic. He's just he's just a bit much, isn't he, for anyone? He puts a pace on. He's very wild, but he can get caught as well. And I think going up to the upper echelons, people will be confident I can crack him and I can knock him out, you know. So, but Cody gave a good account of himself. But Merab was a deserved winner. He got the scores and he moves on. Again, that was a great performance from both guys. But Renab, you know, particularly, he looks sensational. So he will move on now and he'll go and challenge all these top guys, and he deserves it. He looked fantastic.
I'd like to see Miranda fight Cruz. I feel like that's a fun fight. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, who's Cruz linked to at the minute?
I'm blanking
Cruz
on
is
that
linked
one.
to a fight. Oh, it's O'Malley at the minute, isn't it? Yeah, I'd prefer to see Mirab against Cruz than Cruz against O'Malley, to be fair. But I think anyone you put him in with right now, I think that bantamweight division is on fire. So anyone in that top 10, I think he'll give a good fight. And I think the further he goes up, he will find bigger challenges because Cody is, you know, fringe top 15. He did give him a bit of trouble in that fight, but he come through in the end. And I want to see him move through the division now. He's got the talent. He's got everything it takes. So it's time to give him a little push, I think.
Couldn't agree more. I'll throw it to you then to pick out some prelims you want to speak about.
Well, the obvious one is the featured prelim, which ended in a weird fashion. Pinheiro looked fantastic, you know, just before we get into anything else. She looked fantastic. She was throwing Marcus around like a rag doll. She pokes Randa in the eye and she's cutting the eye. So Randa had her chance to, you know, maybe, you know, take an easy way out, but she didn't. Then Randa's on the floor and delivers an up kick, and Pinheiro was unable to continue. What did you think of that?
I believe I saw this clip. I didn't see the fight, but I believe I saw the clip on Twitter. And if it is the clip I'm thinking of, I thought she sold this one pretty hard. Is that what happened? She got hit, yeah. She kind of stopped, and then she fell back. It's
hard with these fights because you feel like you can't criticize them because obviously these are some of the toughest people in the world. But when they start rolling around the floor like that, the toughest people in the world until an illegal shot happens, and then they're rolling around the floor and they don't pop back up. So I don't want to be too critical, but it was very strange because it weren't even a clean shot. It's like she got her at the end of her toes and on the cheek, and then she's rolling around the floor saying, "Did I lose? Did I win?" You know, and I don't know why she would do this. Like why she would sell it, because she was clearly winning the fight. She looked fantastic. She honestly did. She was dominating around the Marcus, who I rate as a good fighter. So, yeah, very weird ending, and I know Felder got some stick for calling it as he saw it, but that's the way I saw it as well. It did look strange, it did look unusual, and she got carried out the arena in the end, which was weird. You know, I'm pretty sure Ben Askren walked out the arena, yeah, so why can't she walk? You know what I mean? So it is weird. It was weird, and it was unfortunate, and you don't like to throw mud on people's names, but you can only say what you see, and it did look a bit dodgy. But before that, she looked fantastic. She seemed to be on her way to a win. So, would she want this anyway? I don't know, but it was very, very strange.
Yeah, I mean, like I criticize the commentators all the time for their biased commentary and just bad commentary, but in that position, like I would hate to be them and have to be the one to, because if you can't just ignore something like that, right? Like it's different when Sterling got kneed in the head and everyone said he sold it, right? That's different because it was blatantly a flagrant foul in that case. Yeah, in something like that, where from what I saw in the clip, and I didn't watch the fight live, I'll be the first to admit that, it looks like she stops after getting hit, looks for a second, then falls backwards and rolls around and whatnot. So, Paul Felder had every right to say what he saw.
That's me. It did seem delayed, and then all of a sudden she's out and can't walk out the arena. So it was strange, and but yeah, I'm Randa Marcus. I've just been writing about her. She's pissed off. She thinks it was a thing, and obviously, when you're not a fighter, the fighters will say, how can you say this and that because you've never fought? But then the fighters are saying it themselves, so it does give it some validity. Yeah, but you look fantastic before then, so it's a shame that we're talking about this. And maybe she was hurt, and that's always the line that you're walking. Was she hurt? Obviously, I don't want, if someone, being says he hurt, I don't want to be, chatting shit about them. But for me, it was a bit weird, and it's a shame.
Oh, well, will be good to see what she does next, because she's 9-1 now. They're going to give her a bit of a jump, I imagine. Marcos, I don't know how many of her last ones she's lost, but she's not been like on a hot streak in a long while. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I think it's 4 on the bounce she's lost, and It's been against really good girls, and this was another one. She seemed to be on her way to losing, but obviously you can never write someone off a round in. She could have pulled it off. Pinheiro could have been feeling tired, and that's why she took that DQ. So you never know, but I'm sure after that one she'll be given another one, because I don't want to speak for Dana White, but he doesn't seem like the type of guy who would think that was a legitimate, knockout shot that she landed. It was pretty soft.
Yeah, we'll move on from that, and I'll throw it to you again because, like I said, I was not awake when these prelims happened, so you can pick up whichever ones you like.
So, these guys can feel hard done. Prochazka against Reyes was good fight, but I wouldn't necessarily call it fight of the night because it was pretty one-sided. Mm-hmm. For me personally, I thought a fight tonight should be two guys or girls bringing it and delivering it, but I thought Prochazka put it on him, so I was quite surprised when that got fight tonight. These two guys can feel hard done by for not getting fight tonight. TJ Brown, Kai Kamaka, they went to war for 3 rounds. It was a brilliant fight. It seemed like Kamaka had won, but TJ Brown got the split decision. Everyone was quite surprised about that. One judge even had it 30-27 for Kamaka, so the other two got it wrong in many of the opinions, and he's going to appeal that loss. I'm not sure how successfully, because it was a fairly close fight, but I think everyone did think Kamaka won. So, that was probably the fight of the night, or one of the fights of the night. It was brilliant. Besides that, you had Loma, only female from Thailand on the card. She looked good. Sam Hughes actually looked good in that fight too. And then Andreas Michailidis, he looked good in his fight. And Felipe Clares and Luke Sanders had a good fight as well. As we said, you probably didn't miss a whole lot besides them top 2 fights on the prelims. This was a night that got better as it went on, so you probably woke up at the right time.
Yeah, it's a bit like that sometimes, so I'm glad that was the case this time. One thing I will touch on before we go to news is PFL event 2 for the season, second event of the season. Rory McDonald, former Bellator champion, took on Curtis Millender, and look, he looked sensational doing it. He got a submission in the first round. Didn't look difficult at all for him. So props to Rory in that one. What did you think of that performance?
It's what he's got to do. Rory is a worry at this point in his career because he's had some mixed results, and you're not sure how much he wants it anymore. He's been speaking about, Jesus, and he doesn't like hurting people anymore and things like that. But this is his job, and this is what he's got to do. And as I said, even one of the worst versions with Rory would be Curtis Millender. But it's just how good he is depends on how quickly he finishes this fight. And it was super quick this time. He had no trouble with Millender, and that's the way it should be. The best Rory McDonald doesn't hear a peep out of him, and he didn't. It was fantastic. He goes on 6 points on the board, and he'll be working towards that $1 million now.
Yeah, and he's my front runner to win the season, to be honest. I really do think Rory McDonald is still a championship caliber fighter. Excited to see how far he can go in PFL. Any last thoughts on their PFL event before we go to news?
Yeah, well, Ray Cooper is going to cause some problems. I think eventually when they meet, it's a problem. He was the last 2019 winner. He, again, picked up a quick submission win. He runs through guys. He is very impressive. Mixed results for the former UFC people on the card. Gleison Tebow lost. Chris Camosi lost. Antonio Carlos Jr., he got a submission win, and Cesar Ferreira, he looked fantastic. He got a big knockout win as well. So I'll keep an eye out for him in that light heavyweight tournament. But good night of fights. But it's great to see Rory back in there. It's great to see these fights back on after such a long while out. And I think it's making for a little rivalry there between Rory and Ray, because they do seem like two clear front runners, and when they actually meet, it's going to be a big fight.
Yeah, well, it'll be fun to watch how all that plays out. We'll go to news now, and I think that everyone knows the first thing we're going to speak about is Diego Sanchez cut from the UFC after his coach, Joshua Fabia, I can't believe I remember that name, but I'm glad I did. He asked for Diego Sanchez's medical records dating back from his first fight to now. So then his logic was that if he has any lingering injuries after he finishes fighting, he can point out where they've come from and whatnot. And the UFC basically, from how I understand it, said, hey, we're going to send you this thing and you need to sign it and say that Diego has no injuries right now and there's no injuries from his UFC fights. Otherwise, we'll cut him. They didn't sign it, so he got cut. Is that right?
Basically, It's a big mess. Like, obviously, since this guy's come onto the scene, he's been causing problems. We've seen the video they released, and for some reason, Diego thinks releasing these videos and calls makes it defends his character, but it makes them look even worse because obviously Fabi was causing problems with in the fighter meeting, and doing these weird calls and things like that. It's all a bit sus, and I think the UFC had kind of just had enough, and they were just like, it seemed to be setting up like they were trying to get medal records for some type of lawsuit after he'd retired or something like that. So yeah, very weird stuff. I'm not sure what to make of it. I think UFC have made the right call. If they're not sure about Diego Sanchez and he's implying that he might have medical issues, how can they sign him off on a fight even though he's past the medical? If he's making these type of noises, or his team are making them noises, I think they've got to do what they've got to do.
And I'll put it straight, I think his coach is a Fruit Loop, man. Like, I saw a clip where he claimed he was part of the first kindergarten rugby team in New Zealand. There's no kindergarten rugby team in New Zealand, so I don't know what he's on about. I honestly don't know where he came from. Does he have a combat sports background? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. That's the problem. So I doubt it. He seems like one of these little wellness gurus who kind of hijacks all this stuff, and he doesn't have that type of experience. And obviously, Diego is vulnerable to that type of stuff because he's totally on board. He's saying it's me and him against this big organization, but the UFC have been good to Diego, and they've been good to him. Let's be honest, Diego should have been cut years ago. Diego's not at the level he should be at competing in the UFC anymore, and they've kept him on. Even when they've cut him, they've paid him his win bonus, which, do you think he was going to beat Donald Cerrone? He weren't going to beat Donald Cerrone. Yeah. I don't care what you say. So, I think the UFC have been more than fair with them. And I think their narrative is that when we retire, we need all these medical records because we can't get out of the UFC. And even though they're saying they're going to pay for our medical bills, they probably won't. So that is an interesting theory, and I'm going to speak to a big ex-fighter through the week, and I'm hoping to speak about him like in terms of his medical bills and how the UFC have helped him there, and try and get that type of stuff. Do the UFC help out? Are they forthcoming with injuries and things like that? Because post-fight care, how protected are these fighters? It's a good point they're making. It just seems weird timing. They could have waited till after the fight, I think, to bring all this stuff up.
Yeah, I definitely don't think he was going to be a Cowboy. It's just an odd situation because I feel bad for Diego Sanchez because he's had such a legacy, he's such a veteran, and he himself hasn't really been causing too much havoc for the UFC. I don't know, obviously I'm not part of the UFC, but it looks to me like he hasn't personally been causing all this mess. It's just been Joshua Fabia on his behalf, which I guess you could argue is Diego Sanchez's choice to have this guy around him. So it's sad to see, but I guess that's what's got to happen. So that's what's got to happen. But yeah, we'll move on. Do you want me to grab something else? You got anything you want to bring up?
Yeah, and just on that one, I just want to add that Diego is chiming in. I know Fabia's leading the way, but Diego's right behind him, backing him up. And, in the fighter meeting, we saw him chiming in, and he's very happy with what Fabia's doing. So, I don't think he's really a victim in this. He is, he's a grown man, and he's going along with what he thinks right to do. So, it's both of them. They've made a mess of it, and he cut. Like, what a crap way to end your UFC career. After such he could have went out on a high. We say he wouldn't beat Cerrone, but he might have. And he had that opportunity, and now he doesn't get it, and now he goes to bare knuckle or somewhere like that against people who don't really care about him, and they're just going to make a load of money off the back of him. So, yeah. Sad way to end it, and what a fighter he's been. Hopefully he hangs it up. He's not going to hang it up though, but hopefully he does.
Other news: Anthony Johnson was scheduled to fight Yoel Romero this coming week. Yoel Romero failed his medical and is out. Anthony Johnson's now fighting Jose Augusto. But the real question here is, what did Yoel fail in his medical? What do you think happened? Why is he pulled?
I think Ariel Helwani reported it was something to do with his eye. He had an issue with his eye. And that's why he was pulled from the fight, and he'll be eligible to get retested in a few months, and hopefully they can rebook that fight because it is a tournament. You'd expect Anthony Johnson to come through with flying colours, and then they can rebook the fight in a few months. But it's a shame. It's one of them fights that it's one of the biggest fights Bellator have made ever, it was just one of them. It's too good to be true, and you've got to feel for them and Scott Coker and the fighters and us as fans because we're missing out on a huge fight there.
Yeah, it's a shame, but I guess Johnson will go through. I'd wager he wins his fight. I'm not familiar with Jose Augusto. Maybe it's an interesting one. I guess we'll break it down before it happens when we preview the fights for all the events and stuff on Wednesday, because I believe it's going to happen again on the same event, right? It's going to be on Friday. Is that right?
Yeah. It's a late notice opponent, so he's just stepped up, but he got a win in his Bellator debut. Johnson is, he's coming from a long retirement. He'll be fancying himself, to come in late notice, cause a big upset, and get himself in the tournament. It's a huge opportunity for Jose Augusto, and Johnson will want to be shutting him down quick because the longer this fight goes, all that time on the couch, all that time, what's he been doing? It could play a factor.
Yeah, no, you're right. Pretty much all the news I had. I guess one more thing before we wrap it up, unless you have anything. But Khabib Nurmagomedov said he's likely to retire from MMA. Do you think he retires? Did you hear his reasoning? Do you need me to tell you what his reasoning was?
It's because he's not fighting, isn't it? Or he's fell out of love with fighting, or...
Yeah, well, I heard, I can't remember whose podcast, I was listening to a podcast, maybe it was MMA Fightings, and they were saying that apparently he saw the fame and the notoriety Khabib had in like his home community and stuff, and he didn't like that. He didn't want that with his career, so that's why he quit. And he obviously couldn't find a fight, so he just didn't want to fight anymore. There might be more to it, but that's how I understand it. Do you think we see him fight again? I
think we do. He's a fighter, I think they are quite emotional, the Dagestanis or the Russians, or we've seen Khamzat, Chimaev. He's like, I'm retired, and they're quite fiery people, and they make these decisions fairly quickly. And he's been out the cage for a while, and I think he's struggling to get an opponent. He might just, oh fuck it, I'm out type thing. I expect him to be back. I wanted to see him back. He's a huge talent. I think he's just turned 30 years old, so he's got it all to give, and he hasn't achieved what Khabib's achieved. So it's okay for Khabib to walk away at this point because he's done it all, and there doesn't seem to be any challenges on the horizon. Whereas Khabib has got a lot to prove, he's got a lot to do, he's got a lot of money to earn. Can he afford to retire right now? What else is he gonna do? There's so he needs to fight. We want to see him fight. I hope we see him back. I hope it's all just all just said in anger, and he'll be back sooner rather than later.
Yeah, well, I hope to see him back as well. Is there any news you got, or we'll wrap it up there?
Just the Jon Jones and Ngannou stuff. So they've been chatting back and forth on social media, and I thought it was funny when Ngannou called him a decision fighter, and Jon Jones, he takes this stuff personally and starts coming out with the stats. So although the Derek Lewis fight seems to be the fight they're talking about, Francis Ngannou still got his eyes firmly on Jon Jones. Jon Jones has got his eyes on Francis Ngannou. So it kind of gives you hope that they might be doing something in the background, something might be happening, something, the fact that Francis Ngannou is still engaging with Jon Jones when a potential fight with Lewis is just a few months away is interesting. And especially Lewis beat him. It was a boring fight and not much happened, but Lewis did beat him. So I like that exchange, and it's given me hope that something positive might be happening in the background.
I think you're being quite optimistic, but also he did say that he wants to go through Jones first and then he'll fight Tyson Fury. So, hey, he didn't say, I'm going to go through Derek Lewis first, then Jon Jones. He said, I'm going to go through Jon Jones first. So maybe you're onto something here. I ideally hope that he does fight Jon Jones instead of Lewis, as much as the Lewis fight's interesting and, hey, knockout versus knockout, let's see who wins. I just really want to see Jones tested at heavyweight, so hopefully that happens sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I am being optimistic, but I'm reading these little signs. Even that one to Fury is the one that set me off because he said Jon Jones first. So when is Jon Jones? How can he be saying that with any confidence if he doesn't know he's fighting Jon Jones anytime soon? I feel like something might be happening in the background. Jones has just left his management company. You never know. Maybe they were getting in the way. Maybe I don't know what was happening, but things might be going in the right direction. You'd hope so. I think everyone understands that Jon Jones won't be getting 30 million guaranteed for this fight. He's got to back himself on the pay-per-view numbers. And once he decides to do that, hopefully we'll get it, and hopefully next.
Let's hope so. But that'll wrap it up there. Thanks for watching, guys. And we'll speak to you on Wednesday when we preview the upcoming card, which we currently don't know who's going to be headlining, but I guess we'll find out by then. And also, we'll be previewing PFL3, the event with Fabricio Verdum coming back, and probably a lot more. So we'll speak to you then. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys.
Make sure to subscribe to the LowKick MMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA.